Hi, my name is Noelle Hagen-Atwood. I'm the curator here with the Newnan-Coweta Historical Society at the McRitchie Hollis Museum. Emily asked me to go over some of my duties as a curator and talk about archivists and kind of the difference between the two and what some of their duties are and roles here in the museum. So because we are a smaller institution, I wear many hats. I'm going to go over some of the terms that you might have heard in relation to curators and museum work, that kind of thing. So the first thing, a curator, I've got my cue cards here, so don't mind me looking over here. It's a keeper or custodian of a museum or a collection. So larger museums where they might have Egyptian antiquities, Greek antiquities, there might be a curator just specializing in Greek or Egyptian or what have you. So that's what they mean by collection. And they're in charge of assembling, managing, or displaying artifacts. So, they need to figure out where this object goes, if it belongs in this collection, in that collection, and where to display it. They kind of come up with the exhibits and the exhibit ideas. They work closely with others in the museum to see what they're going to put on display for the public. And museum registrar, in smaller institutions, this does go under a curator, but they're responsible for implementing procedures and policies that relate to caring for the collection. So a majority of that is donations, loans, outgoing loans. They're going to be the ones taking care of the paperwork, making sure that objects are insured and that they're well taken care of in and out of the museum, and different policies that go with each institution. So, like I said, that usually falls under a curator role. Sometimes larger institutions may have their own separate museum registrar. Collections manager, they ensure proper storage, conservation, and record keeping for objects. So they are in charge of a lot of accessions, so the intake into the collection. They deal with that. If anything needs to be worked on, they'll find the proper conservators for that, or they might be trained to do some of that themselves. When I interned at the Center for Puppetry Arts under the collections manager, and a lot of what she and I did was called condition reports. So what a condition report is it's just something to monitor the well-being of an artifact over time. So some institutions, they've got a schedule. I try to do ours to revisit things once a year to try and, it's just a check of everything in the collection. So it's a form that you fill out. You write down as much about the artifact as possible, the measurements, if there's any cracks, if there's any discoloration. You want to over describe the item. So if anything happens, the next time you come around and you look at that form, you can say, was there a spot in this top right corner of this box? It's not marked here, so let me go ahead and mark it here. That's new. That's something that we need to keep an eye on. You also want to do those when you're putting something out on display, because it's going to be exposed to more light, to more just different environmental changes. So when you put them out, you want to do a condition report, and when you take them off of exhibit, you want to do another condition report. So that's what collections managers do. Preparator. A preparator is somebody who just gets everything ready for exhibit. So if there's a piece of artwork that needs a frame, they're going to be the ones that are going to frame that or make sure that it gets framed properly. They're going to make sure that the stands are correct. They're going to make sure that the lighting is correct, that if anything's hanging, it's hung appropriately. They're going to make sure that no damage comes to any of the artifacts or documents that are on display. So they're just in charge of the handling, moving things. If they're going to move things, like we're in a separate building, in our collections building, than from the museum. So moving things, handling things, that's something that a preparator does. And then an archivist, a term that I came across when I was doing a little bit more research for this video, something that I really like, and it's an information professional. So an archivist is going to know their archive front and back. They're just going to know where things are, where they can locate things, how they can locate things. Finding aids are very important. They're going to be in charge of collecting, preserving, providing access for the public, and research. So that's something that I do more of the preserving and pulling items when somebody wants to come research, but all three of us, Emily, Mallory, and myself, are all kind of in charge of research. We all take part in that. So since we're a smaller institution, all of these roles kind of fall under the curator role. I wear many hats to ensure that our collection is well taken care of, properly stored, properly managed, the documentation is correct, and on occasion some research. So Emily asked, how does a curator or archivist work to make records accessible to the public? And so usually we'll get a research request. It might be a house file or a historic building file. Somebody saying, I bought my house here on 123 Main Street. I want to know who had it, what the history is, when it was built, information that they might not have or that they already have, but they want to double check. So I go look in our archives. If we have that information, I'm able just to scan copies or type out if it's something short and send it back to the person. If there's a lot in a file, I'll usually offer or tell the person, if you want to schedule a time, you can come in, you can check out these files yourself. We can scan what you're interested in, so we're not scanning and sending over 50 pages of something that they might not want. So we just really just get in there and look. Sometimes it's a scavenger hunt. It might be something subtle where I kind of have to look in a few different places, but I'll pull those records and make them either accessible on via email or in person if somebody wants to come check something out. And then what are the best practices used to preserve archives? So the main thing that I check as often as I can is the humidity and the temperature. Humidity needs to stay 50%. That's just, I can walk into a building and it's a little high. I can tell it might be 60%. I'm usually pretty good at feeling those differences. Temperatures, you get a little bit more room for fluctuation. Usually 68 degrees to around 74 degrees is a good window of where you want to keep your artifacts and your documents. Some items are best stored in very cold environments. Photographs are actually best preserved in 32 degrees, which is something you wouldn't really expect. You'd expect them to get damaged, but really they do well. What is bad for your archives is if there's spikes. So if the air conditioning went out in this building and I didn't know about it for a couple days, which my office is in here, so if it was over the weekend or something and the temperature spiked to what it is outside, that would be damaging and something that I would have to double check, make sure that everything's still okay. It's those spikes in humidity and temperature that can be really damaging. Pest control is another issue. I have learned more about bugs than anywhere else doing this job. You just learn about silverfish and what they like to eat. They like paper and cardboard, springtails, just all these little bugs that you wouldn't really pay any attention to. Now I'm looking at glue traps with a magnifying glass to make sure that we don't have the specific pests that are attracted to specific types of materials. So I make sure that if we do have them, we're going to get rid of them. Or if, I notice more in a certain time of year, I need to be a little bit more cautious about just looking after some of the more delicate items. Another thing, a lot of people have worn gloves in the past for archives. They're actually moving away from that now. Cotton gloves can transfer dust and dirt and leave fibers behind, and they don't give you the right tactile feeling to your fingers that you would need to handle very delicate pages if you're turning pages in a book. Same with rubber gloves. They're a little bit grippy. They're not going to give you the right feel that your fingertips would have. And they're actually saying that the oils, the natural oils that occur, are helpful in the pages because they just keep them a little bit more moisturized. So as long as your hands are clean and dry, you are usually okay to go. You want to remove any jewelry though, any rings. Sometimes I wear necklaces that hook on the desk and stuff, so you want to take all of that off, tie your hair back if it's long, if you're expecting to move artifacts or items that might get stuck in your hair, that type of thing. And a curator's best friend, pencils. Pencils, pencils, pencils. If you're making notes on a notepad nearby a document, if you happen to move your hand, accidentally do a little mark, you can erase it. You cannot do that with pen. So that's something that we always try and push. If you're going to come in and do research, if you're going to sit down and take notes, use a pencil. So if you have any more questions, I'm sure Emily can provide my email or whatever she wants to do for this. But thanks for letting me make the video.